In this video, we're going to be learning how to factorize a quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. The quadratic formula uses your a, your b, and your c value. If we look at our first example, we're going to factorize x squared plus 5x plus 1 equals 0. So we can see that it is already in standard form, which is good. Everything is on one side and it's equal to 0. Now, why would you use the quadratic formula to solve a quadratic equation? Well, the quadratic formula is simple. It's easy. You can just plug values into your formula and you can get your solution. However, you have to use the quadratic formula when your two factors of your quadratic equation, or when your two answers of your quadratic equation are irrational numbers. That's where the quadratic formula comes in handy, when you can't factorize it using the normal factorization method. If we look at this example, what we're going to do before we use the quadratic formula is we are going to list our a, b, and c value. So our a value is the coefficient of the x squared, which in this case is 1. Our b value is the coefficient of the x, which in this case is 5. And our c value is our constant term, which in this case is 1. Now we're going to use the quadratic formula, which looks like this. So we have our quadratic formula, x is equal to minus b, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. And all we're going to do is we are going to substitute our a, our b, our c value into this formula. We are going to start by substituting in. We are going to have x equal to negative b, so b is 5, plus minus the square root of b squared, so b is 5, so 5 squared, minus 4 times a is 1, times c is also 1. And that is all divided by 2 times a, and a is 1. Now what you're going to do is you're going to type that into your calculator as you see it. But where you've got the plus and the minus, you're just going to pick plus or minus. Then you're going to get an answer, you're going to write it down. Then you're not going to retype everything into your calculator. All you're going to do is you're going to use your arrow buttons, and you're going to go back to that plus minus and change it to whatever you haven't used already. So when we type that into our calculator, we are going to get an answer of x is equal to, we're going to round to 1 decimal point, so it's negative 0.2, or x is equal to negative 4.8. Looking at our next example of x squared minus x minus 11, I'm going to start by listing my values. So the a value is the coefficient of the x squared, which is 1. The b value is the coefficient of the x, which is not 1, it is negative 1. And the c value is the constant term, which in this case is negative 11. Now I'm going to use my formula, x equals minus b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a, which we have to learn off by heart. We are going to now substitute our values into this formula. So x is equal to negative b, negative, but now b is a negative 1, so I'm going to put it into brackets with the negative, plus minus the square root of b squared, so b is minus 1, so minus 1 squared, minus 4 times a is 1, times c is negative 11, and that is all divided by 2 times a, and a is 1. When I substitute all of that into my calculator, I therefore get x equal to 3.9, or x is equal to negative 2.9. if I look at this question, I have 3x squared minus 23x equals 67. So I can see that this is not in standard form. So my first step is to put this into standard form of ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And then I can substitute into my formula. So I'm going to start by putting this into standard form. So I have 3x squared minus 23x. The 67 comes across, so it becomes negative 67. And that is equal to 0. Now what I'm going to do is I am now going to list my a, b, and c values. So the a value is the coefficient of the x squared, so it's 3. My b value is my coefficient of x, which is negative 23. And my c value is my constant, which is negative 67. Now I'm going to write out my formula. Minus b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a, and I'm going to substitute in. So x is equal to negative b is a negative, don't forget your brackets, negative, because that's actually going to become a positive, plus minus the square root of b squared, so b is negative 23, so negative 23 squared, minus 4 times a is 3, times c, which is negative 67, all divided by 2 times a, so that's 2 times 3. When I substitute that all into my calculator, I suggest that you perhaps pause the video, attempt it yourself to make sure that you can do it. Therefore, x is equal to 9.9, or x is equal to negative 2.3. Pause the video and attempt these two questions by yourself. Here are the answers for the questions that you attempted. I do hope that now you can solve a quadratic equation using the quadratic formula. Remember, the more you do, the better you'll be.